So, you're kind of interested in Starfinder, but you don't really want to go through the book and figure out what all those items do. Don't worry, I got you. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka Thraben, you here for another Pathfinder 2nd Edition video / Starfinder 2nd Edition video. And welcome to my guide of the best items in Starfinder 2E. And I'm specifically going to spin this video with an emphasis on things that you might want to bring into your Pathfinder 2E game. If you're only here for Starfinder, don't worry, all the information is going to be the same for you, but I might be using a few Pathfinder examples here and there. As a quick content check-in, if you're enjoying what I'm doing and you want me to make more of it, please consider financially supporting this content if you can. And if you can't afford to financially support it, a like, a comment on a video, a subscription to the channel, those sorts of things mean a lot. And anyone who does support me via a YouTube membership will get early access to all of my videos, which normally will be more than a day or two in advance, but I was on a crazy back-to-back-to-back weekend spree of conventions, and now I'm just catching up on content. I do want to say that there's some upcoming cool things coming out in the Pathfinder and Starfinder communities. The expansion for Dawnsbury Days releases next Friday. Consider checking that out. I received an early access copy. I've already played through it once, and I will do it again as soon as I have time. It's a lot of fun. I was also part of a media presentation for content creators about Starfinder Afterlight. Their Kickstarter is live. It looks like it is going to be pretty darn cool, and I know some things that I can't talk about yet, and it's very neat. Keep up with that game. I think it's going to be awesome. And I will say that this video is funded by Anubis, one of the channel regulars on both of my channels, so thank you for that. I think this is going to be a fun video. Now, my goal for today is to focus on a level 5 or below character. I want to think about items that are going to be good early on in your career and that you can potentially build your entire character around. And we're going to go into a decent amount of nuance and examples of what you can do with some of these items and talk about some use cases, some classes that these things might be good on, that sort of stuff. Now, let me just get this out of the way. The best items in Starfinder are the high-level Apex items. Okay, yeah, whatever, but that's not what I am going to try to do with this today. I'm going to try to do items that you can build your character around, and I'm going to ignore basic math upgrades. The things that give your armor or your weapon or your skills a +1, I think it goes without saying that those are just kind of cracked and very, very critical to the game's basic math. So we'll be ignoring those. And I'm going to group this into a couple sections here, and spoilers, every section is not necessarily going to be one item. There's going to be a handful of things that I'm going to group together into very clear categories. The last thing that I want to say before I get going here is the Starfinder items are awesome, and I love them so much. And the first thing that I want to talk about are grenades. Grenades are really, really cool, and up at the top here, I have a basic grenade that does piercing damage, just a level 0 item. The burst radius on this is 5 feet, and it does piercing damage. And grenades have a really, really, really long range. At default, their range is 70 feet. 70. So putting that into perspective, many short-range spells are 30 feet. A medium-range spell is 60 feet. And a long-range spell might be something like 100 or 120 feet until you get to the absurd stuff like Fireball with a 500-foot range or something like that. So this is a consumable that does respectable damage in a burst at a long range, and there's a lot to like here. There's actually a whole lot to like here. I did not realize how crazy grenades were until I started playing Starfinder sessions, and it was just immediate that this is one of the better things to be doing if you have the money to be doing it. Why is that? Well, let's compare this to Pathfinder 2E as a starting point. Number 1, your grenades are using a saving throw. Many of the Pathfinder 2E consumables are instead using an attack roll. And you might run into some issues with things like map or rounding out your turn cycles when that is the case. And if you use your consumable and you throw it and you miss, That was your consumable, and that's that. Whereas a grenade that uses a saving throw is often going to do half damage, and that's totally fine. These also don't have fixed scaling. It used to be that if you were using the Pathfinder 2E consumables, that you needed to keep buying better and better and better versions to keep the DC appropriate. And if you let an item sit in your inventory too long, the DC ended up being too low and it wasn't really usable anymore. Well, now your grenades are just going to use your class DC. And this means that most of the time it is going to be better than the fixed DC that you would get from a random consumable item. We're going to come back to this idea in a minute because there's even more nuance there. And to give you an idea of how cracked the range on grenades is, we've already kind of compared it to spells, right? In Pathfinder 2E, your things like Alchemist Fire that you are throwing and making attack rolls for have range increments of 20 feet. 20, 0. It's awful. It's dreadful. And I think there's a far lobber feat that switches that to 30 feet instead if you are an alchemist. That's still, like, not great, right? And the grenades are just 70 feet. You can whip that sucker wherever it needs to go. Also, it can bounce. So if you don't have a clear shot, you can chuck it, have it bounce off a wall, and get to where you need it to go. You can throw it down a set of stairs, have it tink, 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 and blow up the thing at the bottom. Mechanically, these are just super, super cool. Like, these are made to be used. And this is an area damage option that you can get for any class. Going back for a minute, the burst radius is just 5 feet to start with, and while that's not huge, that is area damage as a consumable for any class. And very, very frequently in Pathfinder, your martial classes just hit one person, with some exceptions, obviously. And it's your spellcasters and your pseudo-spellcasters like the kineticists that actually get to do damage in an area. Well, now your martial character can just go and huck a grenade every couple of turns, and now you have some area damage options available to you, which is something that just was not there before. Grenades are literally game-changing in terms of what they can do to an encounter. You can have a martial start with a grenade in their hand, huck it before they, kind of close the gap and get into melee damage, and then switch into I'm going to beat you down with my big weapon mode. Since these grenades are going to scale with your class DC, that means that if you are a class that gets their class DC scaling before other classes normally do, you are better at using grenades than other people. So for example, if you are a kineticist or you are an inventor with the munitions master class archetype, and you get that aggressive class DC advancement, well, guess what? You can do grenade stuff too. And if you're Starfinder specific and you are playing an ancestry that has multiple sets of arms, 4 arms or even 6 arms, well, guess what? In your main set of arms, you can have your weapons that you're going to be using, and then in your other arms, you can have grenades that you can throw. There are some rules about like what you can and can't do with your different sets of arms, and the big thing is wielding items, which you're not doing for grenades. So, do with that information what you will. And in terms of the grenade nuance here, they are very, very, very good in the early game, especially around level 4. When you hit level 4, the burst radius goes up to 10 feet, and the damage from a grenade goes up to 3d8, which is honestly a little absurd. Now, it doesn't go up to the next level of item again until level 10, so there will probably be a mid-game stagnancy with how good the grenades are, but especially at level 4, right when you gain access to this item, they're going to be cracked. I played a Starfinder Society session with a pre-gen. I think we were playing level 2 or level 3 characters for it. I think level 2. And I was in the situation where I was like, I'm never going to play this character again. I'm going to spend all their gold on grenades. Let me tell you, that was one of the most fun sessions that I have ever played in my life. I just bought as many max level grenades as I could find, and boy howdy did I have a just very, very, very good time. throwing grenades everywhere. That was not the way that character, that pre-gen was meant to be played, but boy, it was fun, and I really encourage you to play around with this item. Now, this next section is a follow-up to the previous section, because you can make grenades even better. There are things like grenade launchers that can increase their range. I don't really care about those. I care about the reusable grenade shell. This is a level 1 item. This is going to be important in a second. So essentially, you install a grenade in this reusable grenade shell, and the grenade will regrow and be available for use again the next day. It takes 24 hours to regrow your grenade. So this turns your consumables into replenishing resources. If grenades are already good as a consumable, and you can turn them into a daily resource again, they can become a very, very real part of your gameplay pattern, and not something like, oh, I have some extra money, I'm going to turn it into a grenade or two. And so this reusable grenade shell is essentially your wand of grenades. This is your once a day reusable resource. And this is an 80 gold item, sorry, an 80 credit item. This is very inexpensive. So your grenades that you're buying, you should really expect them to be long-term resources, not short-term resources. And if you have a bunch of arms in particular, and a bunch of reusable grenade shells, and you have regenerating grenades, you can have even more fun. And I'm going to be honest, I find this very, very strange. This item seems crazy to me. It does not limit the level of grenade inside. In Pathfinder 2E, a lot of times these items will be level gated. So when you find something like a potion patch that you can keep potions inside and just use the potion very, very easily, it limits the level of potion that you can have inside of it unless you keep upgrading that item. Well, that's not true with the reusable grenade shell. This is just a level 1 item that you buy for your 80 credits, and any grenade that you find can go in it. So I want you to imagine the timeline where you are, doing a mission, you find a really good grenade. That's not a one-time use grenade. That's a forever grenade. So if you were to find one random level 10 grenade when you're level 7, well, guess what? Now you can have one of those every single day. So the reusable grenade shell is crazy to me, and I think it makes playing with these consumables into a realistic play pattern. And I think that's true even if you are on a relatively limited and tight gold budget. If you like this general idea of consumable repeating resources, another thing you can look into is a dragon gland. So if you like the idea of having a breath weapon that you can keep using, dragon gland is pretty cool. So here's the level 1 version. You can use it once per 10 minutes, one action for each creature in a 15-foot cone, takes damage with a basic reflex save. Damage depends on the augmentation's version, which for the level 1 version, that's 1d6 damage and a DC of 15. Now, is this as cool as the grenades? No, I don't think so, because this does not scale with your class DC. This is a set DC instead, and the damage is lower than that of a grenade. But if you are looking for other options and you want something that is rechargeable, this is once per 10 damage. So if you are playing a class that does not have great ways to use its extra actions, this could be a really cool thing to get. So let's say you're doing something like a monk. A monk is going to probably move and use a flurry of blows, and then they often don't have great other actions unless you're doing something like raising a shield. Well, you could be chucking grenades, you could be using a dragon gland. The Starfinder items give you a lot of really neat ways to customize the ends of your turn, and I love that about the Starfinder items so much. Plus, just visually speaking, the idea of the battlefield exploding as people are throwing grenades and breathing fire, that is very, very appealing to me. Next up, I want to talk about all of the various movement options that are available in Starfinder 2E. And for those of you that haven't played any Starfinder combats tend to be a little more three-dimensional than Pathfinder combats. In Pathfinder, it is relatively uncommon to see flying enemies until kind of mid levels, and flying and other movement speed increases of that nature are relatively rare and often require a feat chain that is like a level 1 feat, a level 5 feat, a level 9 feat in order to give you something like a full fly speed. And Starfinder is just like, we're in space, whatever. And some of the balance regarding this stuff is different. So we're going to look at a bunch of different options here, and some of them might be better than others. First up is the jump jets. This is one that I found in the middle of a Starfinder Society game and had a lot of fun playing around with it. This is something that you install in your armor. As a heads up, you can only install so many things in your armor. Feel free to check out those rules if you are interested. There is an archives of Nethys for Starfinder stuff specifically. All the rules for this game are out there too. So, for one action, you can just activate this to jump. So you fly up to 20 feet with a maximum height of 10 feet, or you fly up to 20 feet straight up. You have to land at the end of the movement, or you'll fall, and it can't lift you if you're encumbered. So this is a cool way to go, oh, I can't reach that platform. Oh, you created a wall that's in the way. Like, just go up and over. This was really, really cool for doing things like getting up onto overhead walkways, jumping up onto spaceships, crossing gaps, things of that nature. If you have a little bit more money than just that, you can get the ultralight wings, also a level 3 item, but slightly more expensive. And this just allows you to deploy wings with an interact action, but you can't deploy them or use them while you're wearing more than light armor, so there is a catch. While the wings are deployed and you're not encumbered, you gain a fly speed of 20 feet and a +1 item bonus to acrobatics to maneuver in flight. So, if you are in lighter armor, you can just very, very easily get a full-on fly speed at level 3. If you're in some heavier armor, you will have other movement options available to you at level 5, where you can get a full-on jetpack that just allows you to fly. So this can give you a fly speed of 20 feet, although there's some catches there that involve you potentially being off guard. So prior to level 5, we already have 3 different, like, very good things that can help you do more dynamic combats that involve getting up or getting across stuff. But there's also a bunch of items that can just manipulate your movement speed. This is something that I'm making, crafting for one of my fellow PCs in my current campaign, a cardiac accelerator. This is 5th level. Once per 10 minutes, free action, you can increase your speed by 20 feet for a triggering action. So one of my players is playing a Guardian, and her character is a little slow, kind of being in heavy armor. And a lot of times a Guardian has a ton of things to do on a turn. Move, raise a shield, strike, taunt. Like, those are just 4 basic things, and you only get 3 actions per turn. And especially if you are further away from an enemy than 1 stride, things can get really awkward. So this is the perfect thing for if you are a little slow and you need to just close the gap on an enemy so that you can make your turn cycles very, very good. This is something that I would not be overly surprised if a whole bunch of our characters end up having this by the end of our current campaign. Free actions, very strong. Full stop. There's also speed suspension, which is just another thing that can straight up give you a 5-foot item bonus to your land speed if you don't already have an item bonus to speed from something else. Note that Starfinder has all sorts of other items and things you can implant in your body or install in your armor that solve a lot of common problems, but a lot of those things overlap with stuff that's already in Pathfinder. So I think it's an augmentation that just gives you dark vision, while there's plenty of Pathfinder items that just give you a light around you that accomplish the same sort of thing. Next up is something that I don't quite think is broken, but I'm very willing to be wrong about it. And that is the Forcefield. This is something that I think is going to be pretty close to mandatory in Starfinder campaigns. It is just incredibly strong. So this is something that is just going to absorb damage and take some hits for you. and its HP is going to vary a little bit depending on what quality it is. Force fields can be used 3 times a day. So this is a replenishable resource that is going to take some hits for you. And if you have a higher grade, a better version of a force field, it can potentially stop critical hits. It will make you do a flat check, and it starts out as a nat 20. If you roll a nat 20, that crit becomes a regular hit. But that DC goes down and down and down and down and down as you keep upgrading your force field. Now, the force fields, if they are not destroyed, will replenish hit points each round at the beginning of your turn while they are active. But if you take enough damage that your force field is temporarily destroyed, it's not going to regenerate those hit points. So here are the first 3 grades of force field, and let's just start by talking about the level 1 version. The level 1 force field has 6 hit points and replenishes 2 hit points on your turn. And 6 is not a big number, but I want you to think about a level 1 character for a minute. A level 1 wizard might have something like 15 hit points, and a tanky class might have something in the high teens or low 20s. I believe my level 1 soldier android with maxed con and the toughness feat has like 22 or 23 hit points. 6 is like surprisingly high for something that 3 combats a day, which at a lot of tables will be every combat, you just get those extra hit points. That's a lot. And as you go up, the hit points start scaling up, and as you can see with the tactical force field, that flat check to negate a crit is just a nat 20, but then after that, when you go up to the next level, now it is a 19. So this is a good chunk of HP, and you can potentially get rid of critical hits as well. This is a strong item. Notably, if you are an android, there is an ancestry feat that you can take to just get a force field for free as an ancestry feat. And a force field is a 200 credit item, a 20 gold item if you are using Pathfinder standards. That is kind of crazy for something that you can just get for free at level 1. And that is going to be a massive short-term power boost. If you're going to play a level 1 one-shot, you can just start with a force field that you normally could not afford. That's really cool. This is a good chunk of HP, but don't necessarily expect the recharging to happen. If we think about those numbers, if this force field at level 1 takes a hit for 6 damage, it's not going to get to replenish. So in order for the force field to replenish, it needs to take 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 damage. Well, a lot of enemies are going to add their strength modifier to their damage, right? And that means that in order for the force field to recharge, an enemy has to roll pretty darn badly in a lot of cases. So I think you should view these as, this has 6 hit points, and if I get any more than 6 out of it, that's really cool. As you go up to other versions, it might be slightly more likely that, like just kind of due to the variance of dice, that you are going to have a greater chance of replenishing these hit points. But I don't necessarily think you should always expect that, especially when an enemy crits, like your force field's going down. I will say the more flushed out your character is at a low level, the harder it is to fit the force field into your action economy. I am playing an android soldier. I started with a force field at level 1. I played 3 Starfinder Society games with that exact character, and I do not believe that I ever activated my force field and then took a hit from it. I just had other things to do with my actions because I had built a very, very strong character. But I am still glad that I had the option of a force field for when things got a little dicey or scary, because I absolutely did activate it. And then the enemy looked at me and went, nope, I'm going to attack someone else who is squishier, and moved away from me and hit someone else. But I had the option to use the force field as kind of a heal spell of sorts that did some damage mitigation when I needed it. And for the final section, at least final main section of this video, I want to talk about a category of weapons that I think are very, very strong. And I have hinted at this in other videos that I have made, But I want to talk about boost weapons. I think these are kind of insane. So, boost is an action, and for one action, you can charge up your weapon. And the next time you do an attack action with that, it is going to deal an additional damage die of whatever damage die size your weapon has. Notably, as your weapon gets better, the number of dice from this scales up. So at level 1, when you just have the basic weapon, it's 1 damage die. But let's say at level 4 and you have an advanced weapon, well, now you add 2 dice instead. And there's no feat associated with this. This is just something that anybody can do. And in Pathfinder in particular, a lot of these like vicious swing power attack type actions are gated behind feats, and sometimes they're not even level 1 feats either, with the Inventor's Megaton Strike being a great example of that. And this can just be, quite frankly, a silly damage increase, and it's the next attack you make. It does not say attack roll, it is the next attack you make. So there are other attack actions in Starfinder 2E like area fire and auto fire. Well, those call for saving throws. Boost works on that too, which is ridiculous, honestly. So here is what my level 1 character was doing. I am playing a soldier. I can area fire with a melee weapon. I've chosen the Pain Glaive, which is a D10 weapon with reach. I get to add my strength score to this, which is only 3. I don't have a maxed out strength since I'm a con-focused class. And I have options to area fire in either a 10-foot burst or a 5-foot burst. Either way, it's good. Maybe depends on how many allies are actually around me. Whirling Swipe is the feat that allows me to do it in a 10-foot burst, FYI. So, if I boost my area fire, I am dealing my weapon damage on a saving throw. So my weapon damage is now boosted 2d10 plus 3. And I can maybe hit 2 or maybe even 3 people in a relatively ideal scenario. So my repeatable thing that I could do every turn for 3 actions deals 2d10 plus 3 in a 5 or 10 foot burst. Well, let's compare this to other area damage options at level 1. How about just classic spells like Electric Arc or Ricochet, which is Electric Arc but a different damage type. That's 2d4 to 2 targets within 30 feet. And this is a great spell. This is a staple spell. Or on a first level spell slot, maybe you have something like Breathe Fire, 2d6 in a 15-foot cone. The damage of a boosted area fire is like far and away better than the damage from a cantrip or a spell slot. And even if you take a spell that hits relatively hard, like a Thunder Strike, a boosted area fire is incredible. Martial damage tends to outperform spellcaster damage anyway in low-level Pathfinder or Starfinder play, but the boost trait, I think, widens that gap a little bit further, and you can have some martials doing some absolutely silly things with boost weapons. And in theory, if you're combining Pathfinder and Starfinder play, you can have something like a fighter with high accuracy boost up a weapon for an additional damage die, and then do a vicious swing or power attack, I forget which one it's called now, for an additional damage die beyond that. And the numbers that you are capable of generating with boost weapons are some of the silliest things that I have ever seen in this system. I can't imagine like the Magus with a boost weapon that then spell strikes on top of that. Like you can probably do some very, very, very silly, honestly unnecessary amounts of damage if that is what you care about by playing with these boost weapons. Now, obviously, I have chosen a melee weapon to show this off because I think it pushes it to the extreme, but there are also going to be other burst options available to you, and I haven't done a lot of playing with ranged gun users in Starfinder 2E, me personally playing those characters and designing those characters, But seeing what my melee soldier was capable of doing makes me wonder, like, how crazy can you build these gun users that are like using burst and area fire in conjunction with each other? Like, what is the system capable of? I'm looking forward to finding the answer to that. As I wrap up this video, I just want to talk about some of the possibilities of things that you can do if you are mixing this Pathfinder and Starfinder stuff together. You can take your already tanky barbarian and slap a force field on them. That barbarian can activate that force field and then sudden charge in, and be okay for sudden charging in because they have that little extra HP buffer, in addition to their temporary hit points that they are going to get from raging. That force field activation does not have the concentrate trait, so like, go wild. And on a lot of classes that don't necessarily have a good third action, some of these things like the dragon glands and the grenades and the boost trait can allow you to properly round out your action economy and make your class or build more competitive than it otherwise might be. I do think you can build some absolute monsters of characters if all you are trying to do is optimize for like the biggest and best and hardest hitting characters by kind of combining and mixing these matching these things and finding the exact perfect things. But what's cooler to me is that you can take things that maybe were a little underpowered and fully round them out and turn them into incredibly functional characters that can keep up with more optimized builds and classes. So, for example, one of the things that I complained about the munitions master inventor archetype is that, like, what are you going to do with your extra actions? It doesn't really make sense to do a lot of other things. Well, okay, what if now you just have a grenade in your offhand? Or what if you are a skittermander and you are mixing your ancestries with your Pathfinder classes, and now you have a bunch of extra arms, and you can be throwing grenades while manning your light mortar? I think there is a lot of potential for really cool things. And if you come up with some neat ideas that mix and match this stuff, I would love to see those down in the comments below. I am really, really enjoying mixing and mashing these systems together into a really cool amalgamation of sci-fi fantasy. And if you think I missed any other cool items that should have been in this video, throw those down in the comments too. I'm likely going to loop back to items again sometime in the not too distant future as I get more and more familiar with the system. But with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it a day here and get some dinner. I hope this was useful to you all. Have a great rest of the day. See ya.